really lovely event. So please pass on to everyone who was responsible our thanks. Let me start this morning by talking about a really neat event coming up on July 13th. So mark your calendars. The Colorado River Gore Canyon Whitewater Park is going to be celebrated on site that day. It's a ways up the river, as we all know. If you would like to be on the river and float, there is that opportunity. And even if you can't do that, the float trip will end right at the pump house, right? Or we go down from the pump house.
It actually starts.
Can I ask Caroline Bradford to help me here, because she's the one that's doing this.
Carolyn, would you introduce yourself, please?
Caroline Bradford on behalf of Grand County. The float trip will begin at Pump House, float down the Colorado River to Radium, and then you'll load on the buses and come back to Pump House. So it's a little loop. And then the party itself, the ribbon cutting event, will be at Pump House right in front of the Whitewater Waves. So we'll have a show of boaters playing on the river. Peter Fleming will be there, Eric Kuhn, others in their boats. We expect it to be just a wonderful party, and we'd love to know how many people want to come. And all of the support that we had from the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the board members and the staff, the project would not have been possible without this support.
Well, that's great. And if you've looked at your calendars, you see this is the week that we meet again in our bi-monthly meeting at Ignacio. So it'll be possible to work both in because of the way this is set on Monday, and then it goes into the evening, but you can still get some distance. I guess you could camp, but you could also go back down to Silverthorne or head out anywhere you want to. But Caroline will get maps to us and give us all the details. But I really hope we can make it. I think it's going to be a wonderful trip, and I think nice to see this activity on that part of the river. We are a part of that. We're proud of that. So
thank you very much.
And we passed out, if you have in front of you, Caroline's contact information. So that's the place to go with, is to her, and you'll get what you need. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you've all noticed I've handed to you, or put at your place, and some back in the back, the Waving Hands Review. Those of you that have been around me since I've been at the college know that this little document in its annual publication is a true treasure. This is done by the students at the college and the professors, and it contains only art and literature products from folks in Northwest Colorado. So it's a homegrown publication, and I think it's probably as good as any of this kind you ever can find. And so I appreciate that many of you have expressed from year to year your joy in having it. So I brought a briefcase full, and I'm happy to share them. This year, it particularly is a story that really fits our work here. And I have to quickly look for here it is on page 41. If you've already scanned through, this is a story about why in the 1950s there was not a dam built on the Green River. And if you know any of that history, you know that while all of the work was being done all across the West by the Bureau of Reclamation, a significant structure was planned for the Green River at about the place where the Yampa joins the Green at Echo Park. A pretty spectacular place in the world. And this article is written by Andrew Gulliford, who's a locally grown historian, is now professor of history at Fort Lewis. And he has researched and recounts how that came to pass. And I thought it was an interesting story. I had known some parts of it from a different point of view. But 2 points will come to mind. One is you'll see what can happen when just a few citizens stand up and talk and are listened to and have something to say about the location and what that means. And it's also one of the times that becomes significant in the history of the environmental movement as we know it in the West. So anyway, it's nice to have something about water as well. So I hope you enjoy. And if any of you didn't get one and would like to have one, I'm more than happy to get one to you when I get back to my office and get some more. On the issue of the river, we can look at the numbers again. James had put the numbers on Lake Mead and Lake Powell in his report, so I'll just refer you there. These numbers haven't changed a lot from what we've been talking about. As of the early in April, Mead was at 40% of capacity. That's a number you know. And Powell hasn't changed much. It's sitting at 45% of capacity. I didn't try and wouldn't have thought I could get any current numbers that would reflect what's happening right now, at least here. But I think all across the West, there's been quite a lot of moisture over this time period from these numbers till now. This forecast that based upon what was known in April, they thought maybe that Powell would have an inflow of 66% of average. That number probably will go up some, but I doubt if it will be significantly more than that. But we know we will always take with great joy and pleasure all precipitation we get whenever it is, because we are in the arid West. So I don't have any numbers better than that, but they will be better, but not to tell us we're out of the drought, because we aren't. One other point I'll finish with is just a conversation I want to have about the outreach to the state water plan and what we think the political environment will look like as we go to final draft and then finish and then the legislative session. James and I participated in an event earlier this week that probably could have seen coming, but I hadn't. And I think it can come anywhere, anytime. And it's simply that no matter how hard you try to communicate, how much you reach out to include and to teach, you can't get everybody that matters. And in our particular example, we discovered that county commissioners are interested, but maybe in significant numbers have not had an opportunity to really learn a lot. And so even though we know that every county, through its county commissioners, can have a designee, including one of themselves, on each basin roundtable, we probably shouldn't assume that point by itself is actually informing the rest of the county commissioners as fully as they need to be able to support what we're doing. And so what we find is happening, at least in some of the western slope counties, as the 7 points are increasing in conversation, it's really beginning to stimulate some of the older thinking about transbasin diversions. And so we need to recognize that the elected public officials maybe need some special attention again to be sure that we can inform them as much as possible, and that their comments and decisions towards not just the 7 points in whatever form that takes, if any, But the entire water plan needs to be stepped up another notch on information and education. I do think there will be an effort for the Club 20 counties, county commissioners to meet on this point. I see by my own emails, they're looking for a date on a Saturday in July. And so James and I offered our staff and ourselves to do everything we can to help that meeting be successful. So at least my colleagues here with Count 20, it's an alert to you to recognize this is happening, and maybe a conversation with your county commissioners fairly soon would be helpful. All counties are going to be different. They're going to be participating different levels in different ways. I get that. But at least we found this one sort of pay attention event. And so that's why I wanted to mention it. And we'll certainly try to not only participate, but maybe lead in that conversation when it happens. So questions for me?
Director Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director George, what is that date in July? Do you have
The ask right now is every Saturday and every Friday in July. And that's an attempt to find out who can do what. And James, just so you know, I can't do any of them. It's going to be tricky, so we don't know yet. And I think it'll probably even have to go into August. It's going to be very hard to find any date in the summer that you can get a near full complement of the people you're reaching for. But the effort is a good one, and we're supporting it wholeheartedly, and we'll do everything we can to cause it to happen and be successful.
Thank you, Director George. You've simulated some of my thinking, and the outreach part is extremely important. I wonder if you and James also had discussion about attending CCI and CML conferences over the summer. The Water Congress, of course, that's all of us basically in the water business, but other outreach groups and other annual conferences. If you're on
James and I have not had that conversation, but I know there's been quite a lot of things done there. I did raise that point in the conversation with the county commissioners, just in passing, and was reminded that CCI really doesn't like to get into the water issues, particularly where you're on the Trans Mountain diversion conversation, because of the membership that they have. And so they directed us away from, at least in this conversation, using the auspices of CCI. But beyond that, that's a wonderful place for communication and education. James knows more about it than I do.
James.
You bet. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have participated at CCI, CML, SDA, Club 20, obviously Water Congress, as you mentioned, and all of the CMU events that Hannah Holm has invited us to. We've tried to get there as well. So we'll continue to do that. There's an article in the SDA newsletter that just went out that's all about the water plan. It was about an hour and a half interview that I gave for that, and they did a good job writing that up. And then we're in the midst of doing something similar with CML's newsletter that'll go out here in a couple of weeks, I think. So I think we've got outreach, but Director George is spot on. We can't stop there. We have to make sure that when county commissioners are sending delegates or representatives and not themselves, that we don't assume that they are, clued into everything that we're doing. So.
Well, thank you. I know you've been busy traveling around the state talking about the water plan and some of the other staff. I'd like to kind of make sure too that Progressive 15, which is the northeastern counties and eastern counties, as well as Action 22, try and get on their agendas too for a program about the state water plan.
Yes, and we've been actively working with them when they've made their legislative trips over the course of the last session. We sat down with them and chambers of commerce that rolled into Denver, and then the forums in the respective basins that hold those. We've been active there as well.
Thank you very much. It's a daunting task. Thank you for your comments, Director George. Are there any other questions for Director George? If not, we'll move to the San Juan, San Miguel, Dolores River Basins, and Director Montgomery.
Yeah, I too want to thank everybody for all the hospitality in Sterling. This is my first trip to Sterling, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've eaten more beef than I probably have in a month. So
Thank you.
more than my fair share. Both dinners just have been delightful, and to see so many people from the water community locally coming out to be part of this it's very warming, and I've appreciated it and enjoyed it. Quickly on our water status, we have been saved by the rainy, wet May and April, and we're back up to about 85% of average in terms of precipitation. And the good news too is that covered the storm that we had back in April. And so our runoff will be delayed, and that's good. I wanted to point out a news article that came out, and I don't know if anyone saw it up here, or if you're getting the water news, you might have seen it. But there was kind of a funny event. Steve Harris, who you all know from Harris Engineering in the Southwest, sponsored a press conference and a party called Long Gone. Invited all of his water buddies, and had a party, and everybody got a shovel when they came, and they started digging up his sod in his backyard, and it was a big press conference. But the funny thing was the picture in the paper were all the usuals that you would think of in the Southwest with shovels digging up this lawn. And I was thinking so much about what Director King said yesterday, as think how far we've come. And 5 years ago, if you had said that this group would be out, digging up sod and making a big splash about it, I wouldn't have believed it. So it is interesting how the Southwest is really the big proponents of outdoor conservation. Diane had asked me for a quick update on ALP recreation. And I think that's because she was trying to decide whether to bring her canoe and her swimsuit down for the next board meeting in July. But I have to tell you, Director Hoppy, don't bother. Leave your canoe at home. Recreation is still delayed, but it is moving forward, and there is a scaled back plan now, and the association has agreed to this conceptual draft recreation plan. The town of Durango is still going to be the manager of it. And so I think right now everyone's just trying to push Bureau of Rec to move things along a little bit faster. And then finally, I just want to thank Ted for coming to the Southwest for the annual Southwest Water Conservation District Conference. It's a conference that happens every year in April. And just I think because of the buzz that's going on around water, it was a capacity crowd, and the most people ever attended, and a lot of new faces. So that was a great thing, and it was great to have Ted speaking there. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director Montgomery. Are there questions for Director Montgomery? If not, we're going to move on then to the Gunnison Basin and Director McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The data that I know today is undoubtedly going to change in the near term, because it's in the Gunnison Basin, the precipitation has been coming heavily the last few days. Ironically, when I left Gunnison at about 5:30 Tuesday morning, it was raining in Gunnison and snowing in Salida. So we had a different experience. Right now, the snowpack in the upper basin is about 78% of normal. It's a little bit less in the lower basin. Taylor Park Reservoir, the forecast for April-July inflows On May 1st was 63% of average, but as of May 15th, the forecast increased to 74% of average because of the precipitation we're having. Unfortunately, the precipitation is spotty because at one snowtel in the upper basin, the snow pack is 104% of average, and at another one it's 0. So it's difficult to know what we can expect. Our runoff peak came early and was very much below average this year. It was about 2 weeks early and about 68% of average. So it's been a very bizarre spring. But we still are looking probably for Blue Mesa April, July inflow at about 450,000 acre feet, which will put it at about 68% of average for storage for this year. Some events coming up in the Gunnison Basin. On June 1st, the Colorado River District will host its annual State of the Gunnison River event in Montrose at 7 p.m. June 12th through the 14th, the Gunnison River Festival, and there's a fly fishing tournament and a rubber raft race down the Gunnison River, for those of you who find that exciting. And then the Gunnison Water Workshop at Western Colorado State University will be June 24 through 26. And the big news we're going to hear a little bit later when Steve tells us about his hydro plant, and I'll let him, I'll save the headlines for him on that one. So that's all I have to report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director McLeod. Any questions for Director McLeod? If not, we're going to move up to the North Platte and Director Wattenberg.
Good morning, everybody. Certainly like to take this opportunity to thank the residents of the Lower South Platte for your wonderful hospitality. Truly appreciate that. It was a top-notch affair. Really do appreciate that. Also, thank you, Director George, for the good read. These are always, they're good books. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Actually, this spring in the North Platte Basin, it's been a good spring. We were doing a lot of stewing and fretting and hand wringing about the middle of March, but things turned around and we've had good moisture. None of it's been too rough for the livestock producers, so they truly appreciate that too. And it's, yeah, we're very optimistic. So things are looking really good. Basin Roundtable, we're really focused on making headway with projects in the next few years. We're really working hard at that. And that's actually about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Wattenberg? Thank you. I want to report for the South Platte Basin and tell you how wonderful it is to have you all here. As I told you, this is my hometown, even though I don't live there, but my heart is still always out here and with the folks out here. One of the great things about our board being able to travel around the state is really to get to know the other basins, and that's really what Joe Frank and Jim Yon attempted to do, to put together the water users out here for you all to meet with them and have the opportunity to visit with them, as well as some of the business people in the area. And I hope the takeaways that you got are really how hardworking this river is, how much we appreciate the development of irrigation in the upper regions of the South Platte, and that allows us to irrigate down here on the lower regions, and how important agriculture is to our communities. It really is the people everywhere we go that are the wonderful part about it, and those that are involved in water. We all have a special connection with each other. So even though we feud over water quite a bit, we do it with a good place in our hearts too, and have some sympathy and some empathy for the struggles of others. So it's pretty unusual that we would meet in Sterling at a time of high water in the river. I think of Kevin Houck back here, who gives us our flood updates. And Kevin, I think since I was born a number of years ago in this community. I've lived through at least 300-year floods, and I'm not 300 years old, but I'm getting close. But really, I appreciate the opportunities that the state of Colorado has given us to recover from the floods. The help that they've given us through the drought times out here has really been very meaningful. Right now, throughout the entire South Platte Basin, our reservoirs are full. And part of the plan on the South Platte is to manage the water so that when the reservoirs are full, we can time the releases. It's a big issue for the water managers, how to time those releases, but actually try and make room for the water as it comes in. And state engineer's office is always a big help there. I go back to the days when we had the gentleman's agreement on the South Platte, and really there was a little more of a spirit of cooperation then, but we're still managing. The high water issues we heard a little bit about yesterday. Again, Director Stolp, thank you for all your help there. And I think this afternoon we'll hear a little bit more from some members of your technical task force or technical group, whatever. Yes. But in terms of our roundtables, Director Wells is not here. I did attend the Metro Roundtable last week as well as the South Platte Roundtable. Both roundtables are still planning to go forward. We have a lot of work before us as our basin implementation plans indicated to us all. We have a lot of work to do continually. And I think both roundtables are willing to go forward. We're seeing quite a bit of turnover in terms of the membership on the roundtables. Some of the members who were with us when we first started the roundtables are beginning to retire. They thought maybe about 10 years of volunteering work every month at least for a meeting, and then all the interim work between the meetings was quite a lot. So they're willing to allow someone else to volunteer their time now. So we're seeing some change over there. But thank you all again for being here, and appreciate your kind comments. And I'm glad you had the opportunity to meet my folks out here. Thank you. I'd take any questions you all have, but if not, we'll move on. Well, we're going to move on then to Director Hamill in the Arkansas.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. I also would like, I got to tour the lower South Platte back in the 90s when I was on CWCB before, and it's great to come back. Appreciate the hospitality. Last 2 evenings, some great conversations. And of course, I always learn a lot about how unique or different each of our basins are, and the streams and the managements of those. And so it was good to get a refresher course and an update on the South Platte. So thank you very much. Arkansas also experiencing a wet spring. Mother Nature even found out how to deliver water down to Director Stolp's neighborhood, and certainly helping southeastern Colorado that's been, plagued with drought. So to have that surface moisture for all aspects of cattle and ag, our grasslands, it's certainly great. We're about 103% as a basin. And if you look up on the main stem, though, in the Leadville, Buena Vista area, we're at about 115%. So there was a article Chris Woodka did recently about the rafting industry, and they're excited for this year, predicting a good year for rafting and recreation on the Upper Ark. And as far as year to date and the month of May, all our averages are up in the month as far as moisture. in our basin implementation plan, Kyle mentioned yesterday that our watershed health group had a kickoff meeting April 14th, and we're looking at setting up this watershed health group as we talked to you 2 months ago when we were awarded both state and basin funds through the water supply reserve account grants, and we're implementing that. We're kicking it off. We had a great turnout, hosted it in Pueblo at the Colorado State Fairgrounds. We had 60 people. We had a full morning of discussions, and we had representatives from Leadville to Lamar, from Monument to Trinidad, to talk about a total watershed health plan. And not, when you start off, you think about our high mountain, the forests and that, but really watershed health is broader than that. And so it reaches out into the ag areas and the plains, watershed health for a mutual irrigation ditch company. How do you get rid of tumbleweeds, water quality, non-native species plants, and so we're really excited. We have efforts going on in different areas. Those will all be incorporated into this. So trying to work on a management structure or an organizational structure. So we sought interest in who would serve on a steering committee. We have a special committee under the roundtable to look over this total watershed health. Lower District J are managing the grant, and we're hoping to hire a coordinator through the Watershed Health Grant to coordinate this effort. So it was exciting, a great kickoff. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and we hope it can serve as a model for maybe other parts of the state of those basins that have an interest. Gave an update yesterday on the Catlin Canal, what have we learned, leasing fallowing project. And so I won't go into that today, but I do see Tom Browning here today, and just wanted to thank Tom, who worked with Jay and his staff in putting that workshop together, included a field tour, and just wanted to say thank you. And so it was a great workshop, also well attended. Just a quick thing on the conduit. We do have a bill going through Congress for a reallocation of existing funds within the Bureau's budget before year end of $2 million. And I know Director Eklund and Director King and the governor were a great help last year. And we just wanted you to know that's there. And so any help we can get getting those funds reallocated, because we actually ended up only with, under the president's budget, about 500,000, and we need to have a little more momentum going to keep the conduit project going. It would also, in April, we had the Arkansas Basin Water Forum, and just appreciate CWCB staff for their participation. I think we had 5 staff members. Several of our finance people were there. Kirk, Anna, Brett Newman was there. But our keynote address to kick off the conference was Director Eklund. Director Stolp had a panel where we got basin updates from other basins. Director McLeod was kind enough to come over and update us on the Gunnison, but we had an update on the Metro South Platte, the Rio Grande, and the Colorado River main stem. And so appreciate the getting that information. We also updated the forum. I think they had about 300 registrants for a 2-day. I got to participate one evening and one day. And so we also updated them on the rolled out the basin implementation plan. So we're out trying to educate there. We did do something unique or different. Again, thank you to the Upper Ark Conservancy District, Southeast District, Lower District. They sponsored the night before the conference. And Director Hoppy was there or Madam Chair was there as a participant. And so, gosh, I don't want to overlook that. And so it was just good to have all that interaction at breaks and on the tour and that. So now I lost my train of thought. Easily done. Oh, that's horrible. Looked over and saw Director Hoppy's smile, and
Captivating.
oh, the dinner. I'll get there. Senior moment. Apologize. What we did is invited people here again from Leadville to Lamar, from Monument to Trinidad, public officials. We had 100 or so at the dinner. Thanks to the state engineer, Kevin Rain, and another staff member came, kind of gave a water rights 101. But we had close to 100 public officials. And we also then, I think, plan to do future ones and future forums because we move the forum every year to a different part of the basin. This year we also educated on stormwater issues on the fountain. That's kind of a major thing in this kind of the central part of the region. But it was a great forum, and thank you to CWCB and fellow directors here for helping make it very successful. With that, Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Director Hamill? Seeing none, we'll move on. As I mentioned, Director Wells is excused this meeting. She had an opportunity to visit a son out of the country, so she's having a little family time right now. Want to move on to the Rio Grande Reservoir, though, and Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I'd also like to thank the Lower South Platte water user community and the community in itself. The banker's name, Don, you can help me. Very, very gracious.
And Joe Patterson.
And Joe Patterson.
Yeah.
It's been spoke about already this morning. It's great to get out into the country. I think it's helpful for the board to give us a clear perspective on how big our state is, how diverse it is, the different interests, the different activities. I really enjoy being out. Great hospitality, Madam Chairman, here on the Lower South Platte and Sterling. I really enjoyed the seafood last night. Both.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'll talk about the oysters in particular.
No animals were
excellent.
killed.
I didn't expect to have seafood on the Lower South Platte, so that was a real treat. Yesterday, we heard a lot about rulemaking in the San Luis Valley, and it's a historic time. Not only the basin plan, and for our part of the state, the drought. It just seemed like the lingering drought from 2002. And it was mentioned yesterday, what 2002 really changed the landscape for Colorado, got us to SWASI, got us to the roundtables, basin implementation plans, the projects that are already ongoing, the projects that are being contemplated, the action that's taking place. And I was reminded last night that when you're so close to it, we don't realize that history is being made, and we're part of that, and it's very satisfying to see that the state and the water user community, and now that conversation has been expanded We need to tell our story to county commissioners. They're very busy with all the domestic issues, but the conversation has been expanded to beyond the people that are sitting in the room here today. And rulemaking is part of that. Mike Sullivan, thanks for your perseverance. Convey my gratitude to Dick Wolf. Dick is a patient man through the rulemaking process. Our first rulemaking meeting, the advisory board and the San, I think there was 200 people maybe at the first meeting 6 years ago. And here we are through a thoughtful process. Rules are coming to the San Luis Valley for groundwater withdrawals. And the idea about sustainability is a real challenge. And we've learned a lot along the way as we heard from the Caneas guys yesterday. Sustainability is a huge challenge because of the complexity of the aquifer in the San Luis Valley. And it's all driven by Senate Bill 222 that has this sustainability test. And so I'm confident, Mike, that through good science and recognizing the values of the social values in the San Luis Valley, where the rules are hopefully will get through the court process and will meet the challenges and then equip the sub-districts so they can be successful. And it's a historic moment. We're also experiencing climate change in the San Luis Valley. I've witnessed it here in the last 3 years, from severe drought and fires to rain and snow. So I got a report from the Rio Grande Reservoir caretaker this morning. He also helps the San Luis Valley Water Conservancy District maintaining their Trans Mountain diversion. He rode back into the Winnemanooch yesterday and buried his horse several times in 3-foot snow drifts. He was in there 2 days before and he couldn't find his tracks from 2 days before. So it's just incredible the extremes that we're seeing. And so from my perspective, the rain and snow is much better than the dry and the fire. So we're seeing climate change in the San Luis Valley. The Rio Grande Basin Plan, I call it an action plan. It continues on building strong partnerships. I think that's the common theme that I noticed in the Colorado Water Plan. It's about CWCB developing and continuing strong partnerships. And I think that's a real key to our water future for the ag community, for the environmental community. Go out and find some partners. We'll find that we have a lot of common ground that we're standing on, and to be able to partner up. And the most significant benefit in these partnerships is then how we interact with our federal agencies. Permitting is still a big issue. The Rio Grande Basin has cast off and commenced its Rio Grande Forest Plan revision. It's a 4-year process. Again, it's another historic moment for the Rio Grande. We're operating under the 2012 planning rule. And so for a guy like me, I try to explain it. The 2012 planning rule is heavily front-loaded with public participation, stakeholder participation, and they have 31 meetings. The agency has 31 meetings planned. I've attended a couple of those. So far, it's pretty good, Director Eklund. It's a process, but 31 public meetings, and so we're just dipping our toes in this forest plan revision, which gets me to the role of REACT. And so for the board, I've passed just an update on the activities of REACT, the Rio Grande Watershed Emergency Action Coordination Team, which is now matured to REACT WIN to further and promote the watershed health initiative. Its primary role, as you remember through the executive order, when we had our fire, the West Fork fire, the executive order had 3 main objectives. 1 was for public safety. 2 was to address the natural resource impacts that were on the local communities, because most of the fire was on federal ground, and then economic recovery. And then through the discussion of and the importance of watershed health, REACT is the driving force in the San Luis Valley, partnering with the Forest Service about how do we manage the forest into the future. And in my mind, it's about access. It's about the local community getting through the permitting, getting through NEPA to move beyond a 300-acre sawlog timber sale to a landscape scale activities to deal with the 100,000 acres of burn scar and the remaining 500,000 acres of spruce beetle kill. How do you get access for stream restoration, post-fire and pre-fire mitigation, economic recovery? How do you get sawmills back in, because the shelf life is short for the standing dead trees. So REACT has, you can take this home with you. There's a number of activities that are going on. Public safety is still the primary purpose, but REACT has expanded out to some of these other areas to really have one voice from the water user community and the other stakeholders in the valley to interface with the agencies. And it's a wonderful opportunity to build a partnership with the agency because we need access. And I'm oversimplifying all the activities, but I think that's our biggest challenge in dealing with watershed, permitting endangered species, and how you have activities in your local community that are dependent upon our federal agencies. Another important role of REACT is the radar projects that have gone on, and REACT has, the Water Conservation Board has funded mobile radar units for public safety because the San Luis Valley over to Farmington, over to Durango does not have radar. And so to be able to fill that radar gap between Pueblo and Grand Junction that can only see 30,000 feet, late storms that come in, we know they're flashy. We have burn scars, we've had debris flows. This last winter, there was another radar unit for the Conejos project at the Alamosa Airport to take this new technology to help us with stream forecasting. And forecasting, you're probably tired of me talking about stream forecasting for the San Luis Valley, but it's not only very important for compact compliance, but now for the administration of these groundwater management subdistricts. There's assumptions that are made on April 1st for pumping depletions, replacement plans of wet water to different stream reaches. And so radar and the new technology is very helpful. And this year, the division engineer is taking a hybrid view of the traditional NRCS forecasting with the SNOTELs and snow survey program and the radar with NOAA and NASA coming in together to try to get us for really a better handle on forecasting. And I'll have more to share with you later. The whole idea about watershed health, I was able to participate in a meeting in Colorado Springs a couple of weeks ago with our 2 U.S. senators about how does Colorado deal with our landscape has changed with because of the pine beetle and spruce beetle, our major fire events, the burn scars, this whole idea about watershed health, how the state of Colorado and the local emergency managers and then different watershed groups, REACT and the Arkansas group and CUSP, how they interact with the federal government. Watershed health is, as we know, is becoming a more important issue for Colorado as a headwater state. And I'll have more to report later. I'm pleased to report about the Rio Grande Cooperative Project. The San Luis Valley Irrigation District, Colorado Parks and Wildlife are ready to sign a storage agreement, which I think is the model to take in other areas of the state of this public-private partnership, how you take existing storage. And I talk about the 3 R's, about rethinking, retiming, and reoperating existing reservoirs to meet all these benefits that
I think we're interested in. And so Director King, we're close to signing that agreement. We are going to have a celebration yet to be determined, but soon. And I hope to be able to bring another update at the July meeting about what I think is the model through the cooperative project, about a new way of doing business and finding partners. Now, developing partnerships, Senator Ament, takes some time. Got to build some relationships. You got to get comfortable. You got to get past the fear factor. You have to develop trust. And I think the Rio Grande Cooperative Project is the model of that. And Director Hoppe, I didn't want to look over too soon because I'd see your smiling face and I might lose my place. but with that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
It happens if you look over the
Thank you. I was trying to hide behind Director Eklund so he didn't see me. Are there any questions for Director Smith? Don't see any questions, so we'll move to the Yampa, White, and Green River, and Director Gallagher.
I'll be brief, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Director Smith, for that good report from the Rio Grande. I think we have a lot to, you're leading the way here, and particularly in the watershed health area there. We've taken that to heart and embedded some of your concepts from REACT into our plan. So thank you for taking that leadership position. Also want to thank the lower Platte Valley here, South Platte, for their great reception the last couple of nights. And I've certainly enjoyed coming from Northwest Colorado to Northeast Colorado and appreciating the diversity of uses of water in this area, all across the state, of course. Director George, thank you for this Waving Hands, my first edition of or first issue of this Waving Hands review, which is looks like it has a good history of our lower basin, aspects of our lower basin, and also some good literature as well. I appreciate that. I look forward to reading it. Also, thanks for letting us know about the pump house float. That's something I'd like to do, and maybe take my son along too. He's a real fan of that stretch between pump house and Radium, so I think I can get him to go along as well. He's actually heading down out of Deer Lodge this morning down through the Yampa Canyons for his first float through there.
I hope the sun's shining over there.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. We'll see. He'll have some stories, as we all do when we finish a trip like that. Along those same lines, our own Yampa River Festival begins towards the end of next week in Steamboat. So if any of you find yourselves up there, we have a lot of meetings and events and lots of fun for the river crowd. And also next week, our Basin Plan Subcommittee begins work on the implementation of Phase 2 of our Basin Implementation Plan. And we'll be busy refining the basin hydrology model and also scoping the ag return flow study that Mary Brown talked about yesterday. In July, the Roundtable is going to be holding a retreat in Meeker to discuss the elements of the conceptual framework and conservation. These are some of the knottier issues, as I said yesterday, that we still have yet to wrap our heads around. And lastly, we continue to be active in our outreach program with presentations at 2 meetings, which are in conjunction with the Yampa River Festival next week. So we're going to be busy in our outreach and continue to be so. With that, Madam Chair, that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Gallagher? If not, this concludes item 12 on our agenda. We'll move to item 13. I'd really like to call on Kirk Russell, but I think he abandoned us. But he left his trusty assistant, Anna Moss, to take over for him. So, Anna, you have the floor.
Good morning. For the record, Anna Moss, CWCB finance staff. And yes, I'm here to present the agenda item 13A, which is the projections and cash management report on behalf of Kirk, who is on a lovely vacation right now. I'm hoping he's not listening and just actually enjoying vacation. But I know he works hard, so he may be tuned in right now. So the cash balance report in front of you, I've got the construction fund and severance tax accounts. Kirk, I know, goes over this with you every meeting. This is the last one before the final one at the end of the year. So at the July board meeting, Kirk will give you the full fiscal year recap at that point. So the numbers you're seeing, the left side has the projections that have stayed what they were for the entire year. On the right side, we've got what the cash balance was as of May 1st. So Kirk put this together before he left, which was kind of him. So we do have $11 million in new loans coming today. And so primarily, we just like to go over this with you to assure you that there's plenty of money in the checkbook balance to make good on those loans. So I'll just highlight a few things. You can see on the current revenue side, we have received 3 of the 4 installments of our federal mineral lease up to about $12 million. We did get that $30 million cash in from the general fund transferred back to CWCB, which is good. We haven't had any new loan de-auths or reversals. Reversals are if someone borrows money from us, they don't end up drawing that all or needing it all, and it goes back into our accounts there. So revenue is about $54 million on construction fund. We've got our list of approved loans throughout the year. Today, from the construction fund account, we'll have a little over $2 million. The rest are going to come out of severance tax. So we've got about $6.5 million in loan expenses. We've got our operations. So we've got total expenses down at the bottom of $14 million roughly. So we expect to start next fiscal year with about $50 million in our construction fund, which is a healthy number for us, or about $40 million probably is a more accurate number. And then on the severance tax side, same kind of situation. We've got our projections and our current balances. Something to note on there. So we've received about $17 million in loan payments and interest. We have received $50 million in severance tax revenue. And Director George, you had asked at the last meeting if anyone was sort of looking ahead at severance tax projections and how things were going to affect us. So we've got Bill Levine looking further into that, and he's going to come to the November meeting when it's local and give an update on how projections are changing and production and all that. So stay tuned for that update. We'll get back to you on that. I don't know how far out. Do you have a number you'd like him to target that I could direct him towards?
More than just next year for sure.
Okay.
Because every 2 years you do assessment reassessments.
Right.
So I'd like to see 1, 3, or 5.
Okay.
If at all possible.
Okay. I'll share that with him. Perfect. Okay, well then going down on there, we've got the standard expenses. So you see the summary of the loans we've done to date. And then again today, just under $9 million out of severance tax. We've got our other expenses throughout the year on here. And then we have projected in that there are going to be a few withdrawals on as far as the Chatfield investment will come out July 1. So we kind of start keeping track of that to make sure we can hit that once July 1 does hit. So right now our balance is around 38 million. Again, start the year somewhere around $50 million for next year. And then Kirk will give you the full update at the end of the fiscal year when we reconvene next time. So with that, I'll take questions from you all if you have any.
Great. Any other questions for Anna? I guess not, Anna. We'll move on then to agenda item 14, the water project loans.
Okay, again, Anna Moss, CWCB Finance Staff. I'm going to present agenda item 14A, which is a loan request from the Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association for the Drop 5 hydroelectric project. We've got Steve Fletcher in the audience here as well. He made the trip all the way over from Montrose, so we really appreciate him making the trip. And he's an expert on this project, so he'll be available for questions as well. So this, excuse me, this loan request is for about $7 million. It's a 20-year term and at our hydro interest rate of 2%. So to give you just a brief background on the project, the Uncompahgre project area is located near Montrose. It's actually the oldest Bureau of Reclamation project in the country, one of the oldest. So water comes from both the Gunnison and Uncompahgre rivers through canals and laterals to the water users in this area. It includes water that's stored over in Taylor Park Reservoir, and on the Taylor River, which is part of the Gunnison Basin. And then water also diverted from the Gunnison River and through the Gunnison diversion dam. It goes through the Gunnison Tunnel to the South Canal, and then ultimately it does go back to the Uncompahgre River. So under the association system, approximately 85,000 acres are irrigated. That really helps support that local economy. Right now, the association actually has 4 hydro projects on its system already. Those are drops 1, 3, 4, and 6. So today we're talking about drop 5, which is kind of the lowest southeast drop over here. They've got 2 drops that Delta Montrose Electric Association runs on their system that have hydro already. Drops, let's see, I think it's 1 and 3 are owned by Delta Montrose. And then drops 4 and 6 are owned by Chavano Hydro LLC. And so they've got those 4 systems already up and running. And in those 4 cases, royalties are just paid back to the association. So they don't own those systems. They're getting a revenue based on the water from their system that's used by other users. And so their board of directors said, well, hey, you know what? These guys are making good money on these hydros. They've proved to be effective. We kind of like to own our own hydro site. So they've decided to develop drop 5 as their own. And that's going to help offset operations costs. They've got that system is a huge system, so their operations are fairly substantial. So this revenue will help offset costs to those irrigators. So drop 5 is going to be a 2.2 megawatt hydro facility. So they're going to construct a diversion and bypass canal that's going to bring water into their intake structure. It's going to be returned back to the irrigation canal, so it's not going to affect the irrigation delivery of water. There will be a powerhouse that's going to hold the generator and turbine, and that turbine is going to be a Kaplan turbine that's the same as they have at drops 1, 3, and 4, so something that they're used to working on and maintaining. There'll be a transmission line. It's going to be an underground line that connects to DMEA's system. This project is being performed under the reclamation lease of power privilege, so they don't need to go through the FERC process because it was an original Bureau project. So the next steps, they've got to finish executing the lease of power privilege. I think that may be done soon, hopefully by June of this year. Then they'll order the turbine to be delivered next spring, and hopefully they will be delivering power by summer of 2016 is the plan. A brief financial overview for you. So the total project is around $7.7 million. They intend to put in cash of their own $770,000. So the loan amount with that service fee is just under $7 million. Annual loan obligations are around $469,000. The association does expect the revenue from the hydro to actually pay for itself. I will tell you that the terms of our loan contract, however, will require that if for some reason hydro revenues don't come in, the water users are on the hook to pay back our debt service. It's a little bit of a variance from their other projects where they just get that royalty payment. So they are a little riskier for them, but it looks like the numbers are all going to work out to cover everything. So currently there is a 20-year power purchase agreement in place for drops 4, 5, and 6. So we're talking about drop 5 today. And in that agreement, it has Delta Montrose Electric terms. The association is working on a sub-agreement that would just route the revenues from Delta Montrose Electric to the water users directly. And then that's how the revenue stream is going to work out. And I just mentioned that because we generally have the conditions in all of our hydro loans that say you have to have your lease of power privilege in place and you need a power purchase agreement. So we've kind of just handled that with this sub-agreement requirement in our additional conditions. Financial ratios look good. The association has no existing debt right now. It does cover its expenses with adequate revenues. Because they don't expect to raise assessments, we evaluated just the hydro projections, what they expect for the operations and expenses, and that looks like it is going to cash flow itself, which is great. Again, collateral on this one will be that pledge of assessment revenues backed by a rate covenant, and then we will also take interest in that drop 5 facility itself. And with that, I'll gladly answer questions or invite Steve up if you've got questions for him.
Thank you, Anna. Director McLeod?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like Mr. Fletcher to come up and tell us some exciting news that he received yesterday about this project, and also to let you know that when you come to Montrose for the meeting in September, Steve's agreed to give us a tour of some of his existing hydro facilities, which I can tell you are very impressive. These folks are leaders in low-head hydro in Colorado. They've got the most operation going anywhere in the state.
Great. Welcome, Steve. Would you
Thank you.
introduce yourself for the record, please?
That's Steve Fletcher, manager of the Young Compadre Project. Thank you, Director McLeod and Madam Chair. The news that Director McLeod was referring to is yesterday it was officially announced that we were successful in the last Water Smart grant that we applied for.
Wow.
This Water Smart is not for Drop 5, it's for Drop 4, which is another project that we're just now completing. Actually, will go online the first part of June here. They're in the process of fine-tuning the turbine and generators on it right now. So they are looking forward to that coming on. It's actually a 4.8 megawatt system. It's the biggest system we have on the project, which is just upstream from the Drop 5 site that we're talking about. I am planning on putting in for another Water Smart grant this fall when the opportunity comes back out for the Drop 5 project. So we'll see what happens on that. I've got a little more confidence in it now, being as we were successful in the last two that I've put in on hydro. So we'll see what happens on that. But that was exciting news yesterday. So we were glad to hear that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Fletcher? Or did you have additional comments?
Well, I was going to comment on the coming this fall on the September meeting. Looking forward to having you in Montrose and really looking forward to taking you out and showing you some of the sites we have and we should be well under construction on the Site 5 project at that time too. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Thank you for coming here. And I see Director Smith is waving at me.
Thank
Director
you,
Smith?
Madam Chair. Steve, congratulations, a great success story, but I want to know about the exemption from the FERC process. We have lots of opportunities with existing facilities, small hydro. Governor Ritter a few years ago had the task force. There's been some movement on trying to streamline the FERC process. If you have any insight for the rest of us, I think that's a huge part here, being exempt and being able to build on success. If you would, could you share a little bit about for the rest of us?
Sure, no problem. We don't follow under FERC because of the fact that we are a reclamation project. You know, the Uncompahgre Valley Water Users is the managing entity for the Uncompahgre project. So we fall under their guidelines, which is the lease of power privilege, the LOPP, and which exempts us from FERC. And mind, I don't know a lot about FERC. I've dealt, this will be my sixth go around with LOPP, and my understanding is that FERC's a lot harder to negotiate through. I've heard that there has been some streamlining on the FERC process. I know that LOPP definitely got some streamlining. Congressman Tipton introduced a bill a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, that streamlined that process. The drops 1 and 3 that we did with DMEA were under the old process. The rest of them have been under the new, and they've definitely gone a lot faster and a lot easier under that streamline. But we're all 6 of our projects right now that we're either got developed or in the process of doing are just off canal. They're right on the canal, you know, and we just basically put a powerhouse right next to the canal, divert the water through a penstock and back into the canal. The existing canal is left in place on all of them as the bypass, so that if something happens and we're not generating power, the water goes back to the existing canal and irrigation is not interrupted at all. Our primary objective is irrigation on our projects. So all of our project interference at all with the irrigation. And of course, our non-consumptive use, so there's no water being used. We're just borrowing energy from the water to generate some electricity. So, but that's about all I can tell you on the difference between, you know, the us being able to go with the LOPP is because of the fact that we are a reclamation project.
Thank you. Any other questions for Steve? No, thank you very much for coming over to Sterling, and it's nice to see you here.
I enjoyed it. And I was kind of anxious to get here. I went to school here many years ago. So.
Oh, good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you in Montrose too.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, Director McLeod, we're probably ready for a motion.
I think Anna has a recommendation.
Yep, and it's just as presented in your memo.
Yeah, I thought she'd already given that. Go
All
ahead,
right.
Director McLeod.
Madam Chair, I would move that we accept the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's moved and seconded by Director George. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion is adopted. Thank you, Anna. And we'll move on now to the next item. And that's Jonathan on 14B.
Hello, good morning. Jonathan Hernandez, CWCB staff for the record, presenting agenda item 14B. This is the Cornish Water Rights Purchase Project. The borrower in this case is the Lower Poudre Augmentation Company. To get orientated, the service area of this augmentation company is roughly between Windsor and Greeley. They divert off the Cashel-Poudre River. They are seeking a loan to buy the Cornish water rights, loan amount of almost $1.16 million. The loan terms is a 30-year term at a blended interest rate of 1.75%. Dale Trowbridge, the general manager, is with us in the audience, and he is certainly available to address the board or to answer any questions you may have. This map shows a little bit more detailed picture of their service area, and the augmentation company is providing augmentation for wells, and they overlap the new Cashel-Poudre Irrigating Company and the Larimer and Weld Irrigation Company service area for the surface irrigation. Total, there are 28 well owners and 62 wells that are receiving augmentation water through the company. To back up into the formation of the company, it was these words are similar, so it's easy to get mixed up here, but the Irrigating Company, which is the new Cashel-Poudre Irrigating Company, and the Cashel-Poudre Reservoir Company, which I refer to as the Reservoir Company, they wanted to provide an augmentation plan for the members, the shareholders within their ditch companies that had wells. Only not all of them did, so they wanted to be able to separate the cost and the benefit of an augmentation company. So these two parent companies formed the Augmentation Company. They are distinct companies, though there are shareholder overlaps and a lot of the management overlap as well, but they are distinct individual companies. And it is the Augmentation Company that is the borrower for this loan. The Augmentation Company runs a decreed augmentation plan they filed in 2004 when the company was formed and was recently signed in January 2014. Prior to that, they were operating under a substitute water supply plan. And what's important is part of the water rights that have been changed already in that augmentation decree was the Cornish Plain Farms water rights. They built the Cornish Plains Reservoir on farmland, and it was those water rights that have since been dried up that have been changed over for augmentation use for this company. It is 34.5 shares of the Irrigating Company and 4 shares of the Reservoir Company. Since 2004, these shares have been leased to the Augmentation Company for their use. And recently, the landowners decided to they wanted to sell the water rights already instead of just continually leasing them. This was back as the augmentation plan was still going into court. And so the Augmentation Company didn't quite have the financial resources at that time to purchase them. So the Irrigating Company actually purchased them and began leasing them to the Augmentation Company. And the purpose of this loan is to finalize that final transaction so the Augmentation Company finally owns the water rights that they've been intending to own since 2004. The purchase cost of the loan is 90% of the water rights cost. This is table 2, which is the same table in your board memo. And I wanted to highlight that the Irrigating Company is actually selling these shares at the same price that they bought them from the landowner. So other than the lease charges, there's been no markup on these water rights. And they fall within an appraised value, which meets our requirements for collateral. Table 3 provides the financial summary. So again, the total water rights or purchase is $1,279,500. They are seeking a loan for 90% of that, with the service fee that comes out to a loan of $1.16 million approximately. Again, it's a 1.75% blended interest rate. Annual loan obligation is right around $55,000. The ratios do indicate that they're an average borrower, and the loan security is the assessment revenues on the well owners, plus the actual water shares themselves. With that, I'll open it to the board if you have any questions for me or Dale.
Thank you, Jonathan. Does the board have any questions? I'd like to recognize Dale. Dale, would you like to make any comments about the project? We'd like to welcome you here, and as you're coming up to the podium, I would tell our board members that you're also a Northern Water Board Director, and we appreciate that Northern is a good partner for those of us in the Lower South Platte too. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you. My name is Dale Trowbridge. I'm the general manager of all of the companies that Jonathan mentioned. We have a little inner marriage going between all these companies, and we appreciate the CWCB's consideration of this loan. This is a long process we've had here trying to get an augmentation plan, and we're seeing some fruit to 10 years of work there. The intent all along, as Jonathan mentioned, was for the augmentation company to own these shares. They have been leased back from the ground was purchased, but the landowners kept the water at that time and just leasing it. And we were able to purchase those a couple of years ago as the irrigating company. And now the well owners have decided that it's time to own that themselves, and they've agreed to take on this loan. We also, as you can see, we have as I mentioned, a lot of intermarriage between our companies, and one of our intents is to try to separate those entities instead of, we could have borrowed it from the irrigating or just paid the irrigating company back, but our intent is to try to maintain that separation. We appreciate the dedication that you have to ag, and your appreciate you considering this. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer things.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
We appreciate you making the trip over here. Thank you. Jonathan?
If there are no further questions, the staff recommendation is presented as in the memo.
All right. I would entertain a motion. Director Hamel?
Madam Chair, I'd move staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Second, Madam Chair.
Seconded by Director Wattenberg. Are there any questions? Hearing none, the motion before us is the adoption of the staff recommendation for item 14B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. We'll move now to 14C. And Derek, you're up to bat now.
Derek Johnson presenting item 14C, water rights purchase for the Lower Arkansas Valley Water Conservation District. The Lower Arkansas Valley Water Conservation District, I'll call it the district, their mission is to promote and protect agriculture in the Lower Arkansas Basin through the acquisition of water resources and participation in water-related projects throughout the basin. They have a 5-county area that you can see circled in the red on this display. The district does hold water rights that are available for various uses, mostly related to contract compliance and augmentation, such as Rule 10 and Rule 14 plans, and the Catlin pilot project that you've heard about yesterday as well, and water leases as available for agriculture when needed. The purpose of this project is for the district to acquire additional water rights. They would come from the Colorado Canal. There's a portion of them that are tied to Lake Henry for storage, and a portion of them that are tied to Lake Meredith. This project is part of a bigger effort to acquire water rights. You can see on the left side is a previous WSRA grant for purchasing additional water rights that became available. This project, this loan, is in the blue circle on the right, but together they form a new portfolio of water rights for the district. The district itself, in terms of its financial analysis, they do not have any debt. At the close of this project, they will have this loan, and they will have an owner carry agreement related with the previous WSRA grant as well. The collateral for this project is the their water activity revenues, as well as the shares that are specifically purchased as part of this loan. With that, I can open up to questions. Jay Winter is here, General Manager in the office, to help out with any questions we may have.
Thank you, Derek. Director Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of typos. I think it's Conservancy District instead of a Conservation District, just in case you're listening in, and pacify Jay back there in the back. And then I think you alluded to contract compliance. It's compact compliance I think we're after here, and that's it.
Thank you. Any other comments, Director Hamill?
I don't know if Jay has anything to add. This project fits in the basin implementation plan of retaining water in agriculture. It is a multi-purpose project because it also has some recreation and environmental benefits at Lake Henry and Lake Meredith, where this water will be stored. And these water rights, as Derek's mentioned, do include storage, which is critical in managing water today, particularly when you're going to use it as augmentation water for Rule 10 or Rule 14 plans. So it's an excellent project. And if there are no questions, I would be glad to go ahead and move staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Director Smith. Mr. Winter, do you have any comments you'd like to make before we take a vote on this?
Just won't let me off the hook, will you?
Well, trust this may sway the board one way or the other, so.
For the record, my name is Jay Winter. I'm the General Manager of the Lower Arkansas Valley Water Conservancy District. And I'd like to thank you guys for considering this loan application, the grant application that we got earlier. I live in what I call the HI domain, which is a 5-county area that's responsible for compact compliance with the state of Kansas. A few years ago, the state of Colorado said, you have all those shiny sprinklers down there. And when you have all those shiny sprinklers, we think you're consuming more water than as if you did furrow irrigation. That's when it came up with the irrigation efficiency rules, where when we put in sprinklers, we owe more water. The well companies had always been on the spot market. If you're buying water from somebody else, that's not a good plan for the future. So with the irrigation efficiency rules, our plan is to buy water. You've got to have a sure supply of water. When we started this, there were 39 sprinklers below John Martin Reservoir. So we use a South Platte model of 3% growth per year. That was 4 years ago. There's 275 sprinklers now below John Martin Reservoir. Kind of missed that projection by a little bit on it. So we continue to buy water to make sure that these sprinklers are very efficient, they continue to run, and we make sure Kansas continues to be happy with this, or as happy as they can be. So I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Winter? Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, and I really want to thank Sterling. It's very great hospitality. It's a very nice area, so thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. If there are no further comments from the board, we have a motion before us to approve item 14C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. To item 14D, Jonathan, you're up to bat again.
Good morning again. Jonathan Hernandez, CWCB staff for the record, presenting agenda item 14D. This is a raw water supply project, and the borrower for this would be the Plum Valley Heights sub-district of the Roxborough Water and Sanitation District. Sort of just rolls off the tongue, but I will likely refer to them as the sub-district. And for Roxborough Water and Sanitation District, probably the district. This is the raw water supply project, and as I'll get into the presentation a little bit more, it's part of a larger Northwest Douglas County water project. The loan that they're seeking is approximately $2.2 million. This will be a 30-year term at the high income municipal rate of 3.05%. Larry Moore, the general manager of the sub-district, is with us in the audience, and he is certainly available for any questions or comments as well. So speaking of just the district was formed in approximately 1971, and it included the Roxborough State Park area. This is south of Chatfield Reservoir. And these existing subdivisions were also built around the 1970s, and they've all been served by individual non-tributary wells completed into the Denver Basin aquifers. As we know, these aquifers are declining. These subdivisions are actually on the fringe of the aquifer, so they are declining even quicker, which is leading them to find solutions of replacing the water supply that is quickly dwindling. Of that solution, the Plum Valley Heights first became part of the district, and so hence it was only called the Plum Valley Subdistrict. However, since then, Chatfield Acres, Chatfield East, and Titan Road Industrial Park have also formed into the district, and the district has created the sub-district to address the infrastructure requirements to bring these entities into connecting into the district's water infrastructure. Back in 2003, there was a South Metro water supply study, and I bring this up because CWCB had a part in funding that study, and it was looking at the issue of declining aquifer levels for these subdivisions and what are some solutions for this. In 2013, the Douglas County Regional Rural Water Supply and Distribution System Feasibility Study, another one that just rolls right off the tongue, was funded by WSRA grant and really looked at these entities and looked at some conceptual ideas. Tying into Dominion Water and Sanitation was looked at, Centennial Water and Sanitation, and ultimately Roxborough was decided to be the most economically feasible solution for these subdivisions. The project components of this is, so this is the larger project that we're going to be a part of, is building approximately 12 miles of water lines, a water storage tank, and then also the water supply of, you build the infrastructure, now you need water to fill it. Our project for this loan is looking specifically to the water supply acquisition. Plum Valley recently was approved for a WSRA loan at this last board meeting, and that was to help with the infrastructure cost. And so this is table 1. It's also in your memo that explains kind of a big picture of the entire project, where the funding is coming from. The Colorado Water Resource Power Development Authority loan has been approved, so that now has been secured. Again, the WSRA grant has been approved, and Douglas County has provided this money to do this project. So the last funding is really this CWCB loan that they're seeking today. The 150 acre-foot per year lease with Aurora is a long-term lease. It's a 90-year term with language that it automatically and continuously renews. Again, they will provide up to 150 acre-feet per year. It's based on demand. That is enough to cover 316 EQRs or equivalent residential units. At maximum build-out, the sub-district is only going to be 251. And so this loan cost has been figured at 251 EQRs times the development connection fee of $9,855. And that is what sets the total loan amount, or the total project cost for the loan. And they will be seeking a loan for 90% of that value. The source of revenue that they will have to pay this back will include both property taxes and user surcharges through a water activity enterprise. They actually went to the voters in November of 2014, and they have approval to fund all of this debt through property tax. They are choosing to mix it between putting some on the water bill through a surcharge and collecting them through the taxes. They've heard just from the residences they didn't want it one or the other, but a mix. Ultimately, they have the flexibility to choose if they want to get it all from property tax. They could. They're going to instead mix it with user surcharges through a water activity enterprise. The taxes will begin actually generating revenue in 2016. They are taxes assessed in 2015, so they will actually receive those revenues next year. The user surcharges, they're planning to start that later on this year once the project gets rolling, and which means the residences will actually be paying a water bill before they actually have water at their houses. These are very well-informed citizens. They full well know this project and they know the importance of this project. And so they generally have buy-off on this method of financing it. Currently, they're looking at a $68 per month surcharge, and this will go towards the debt of not only this loan today, but also the Water and Power Authority loan. That brings them up to $186,000 annually. They will be making the balance of that with property taxes. Again, should something happen with the user surcharges, they can get the full debt service out of taxes because they're authorized to collect up to $450,000. The debt service of these two loans will be $432,500. So both the loans will fit underneath the tax authorization. The water bill of the district and the sub-district, I bring this up because they're extremely expensive. Currently, the district's average water bill is just under $100 a month. The flat fees for that is about $60 a month, with the rest of that being usage fees. The sub-district is going to be around $140 a month, and the flat fees that I've shown here will be nearly $100, with 68 of that being reserved to the debt service. And I put in here the metric of percentage of median household income. Even the sub-district at the high rate, they will be at 1.4% of median household income for the water bill. It's generally accepted that between 1 and 1.5% falls within the affordability range. Less than 1% is good, it's great. Higher than 1.5%, and you start having concerns of if the water bill is affordable. So they're reaching there, but they're still under that 1.5%. And again, these are well-informed citizens. They voted overwhelmingly to tax themselves this much. And whether it's through their water bill or through the tax, they know they're still the actual price they're going to have to pay. Table 3 in your board memo shows the project financials. The project cost, again, because it's not the entire project wide, it's just the water supply acquisition, $2.473 million. The CWCB loan will be 90% of that. Adding in the service fee, $2,248,260. Again, they qualify for the high income municipal rate, so that's a 3.05% annual loan obligation of nearly $127,000. The financial ratios indicate that they're an average borrower. They will be very strong in revenue. However, the ratios show that they will be weak in metrics regarding to the debt. And it's simply, this is a new project to get water to existing developments. They know they're going to have some serious debt for the first few years. And I also highlight that this is also a new sub-district. And so the revenues have not come in yet. So for the ratios, to give a comparison, I looked at the district as for the past few years. Going forward, it's only the sub-district because our loan will be specific to the sub-district. Loan security will be a pledge of the ad valorem property taxes. This is the same security that the Water and Power Authority loan has, and they both fit under the authorization, and so they will be able to meet parity. With that, you have our staff recommendation, and I will open it to the board if you have questions of me or Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Jonathan. Does the board have questions for Jonathan? If not, I would like to ask Mr. Moore to come forward. And Larry, if you would make a few comments and introduce yourself first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Larry Moore, General Manager of the Roxborough Water and Sanitation District. Before we get started, I want to apologize to Director Eklund. Last time I was before you, my Texas accent led him to think I said rural, R-U-L-E, when I was trying to say rural. So I wanted to make sure I cleared that up with you, Director. Once again, certainly appreciate the CWCB support through this project. It's been quite a undertaking. Douglas County has been a great supporter. City of Aurora has stepped up and made this water available, which is very, very unusual, and it's a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for these people. And they recognize how important it is that there's not any renewable water in Northwest Douglas County. And Aurora made this opportunity for a 5-year period. So we've got a window here to make this work for these people. And once again, they did vote. There was about 6 or 8 questions on the ballot, and every one of those passed somewhere between 84% to over 90%. So we've had numerous meetings, so they do know what they're getting into. The other thing that what has been presented to you is a very worst case scenario as far as the financing. We believe it's going to get better because we performed these all at 3.5%. So initially we thought we were going to have to use the surcharges to help pay for this loan, but now with we were fortunate to get a little lower interest rate from both the Power Authority and the CWCB. So we believe we can fund both of those loans through the ad valorem property taxes, which, and so therefore their surcharge will be greatly reduced is what our plan is. And once we get the numbers, because, with these construction prices, you don't know where they're going to be right now. So we're hoping that even those come in better than we think, and hopefully it'll even be more affordable than how it's been presented to you. Plus the fact that we do have a few more acre feet that we could offer, because there are some other existing homes that are adjacent to some of these existing developments that once these pipe is in the ground and we're serving these people, there's going to be a handful of what we call outliers that will want to bring their property tax, and we'll be able to serve them as well. Like I say, we've got about some 50, 60 connections that we can make to help some of those close outliers. So we think it's a really good project. We think it's the first one as a result of the study that the grant we got to do the Douglas County rural study, and so there's we're going to be able to hook these communities up. It's going to have to kind of be on a case-by-case basis. So this is kind of the first one, and we think can be a good example for the rest of the state, and having districts and counties and everybody coming together to make these happen for these people. So we do, every day when they look at it and they talk about maybe having to drill a new well, they're talking $40,000 to $60,000, and there's no guarantee they're going to find any water there. So they know that this is an expensive project, but they know they'll be done. And then once again, we made it where they can pay it over time and not have to come out of pocket.
I must have done that. Director Stoll?
I was curious, do you have any kind of covenants or requirements on indoor or outdoor water efficiencies?
Oh, absolutely. We do. A matter of fact, since the 2002 drought, our board has restricted watering to 2 days a week. We continue to do that today. To my knowledge, we may be the only district that is requiring that. So we have never come off our 2-day watering. Our board feels like that our customers can figure out how to keep a landscape alive on 2 days. So everybody else has kind of gone back to the 3-day watering, but we continue. We think that's just being a better steward of the resource to keep 2-day watering. We have a rebate program for washers and toilets and what have you. And of course, we meter everything, and we even now have meters where we can where we upgrade those. We just finished another upgrade where we can go in and actually analyze. Somebody says, I didn't use this water. We can go in there and put the computer on there, and we can tell them exactly to the minute where it went